All right, everyone. Let's try to call this august group together. Thank you all for being here. For the new members, my name's Jim Godfrey. I'm the chair of the CAC, and we welcome you all. So let's, I got this thing here, so I will call the meeting to order. And I'd like to, first of all, welcome Kathy Heisey, our new appointee from the county, and Barb Winter from Manitou Springs. So thank you both for being part of our group. And thank you all for coming and being here in attendance, and our audience as well. I would like to maybe mention up front that Rick, you want to go ahead and
certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, the process for appointing at-large and at-large alternate CAC members is through the board via a board subcommittee, and that's board policy number 23 that sets up a board committee of the board chair, board vice chair, and the CAC chair to review the applications for the CAC at-large and at-large alternate positions. The new subcommittee, since we have a new board chair, Holly Williams, and the board vice chair, Dave Donaldson, plus Jim Godfrey, your CAC chair, they met last week, and they approved a nomination to the full board on 14th of returning Tony Joya and Rick Hoover back to the CAC, effective when they vote on it on February 14. But Rick and Tony are expected to be approved by the full board on the 14th, and then they'll be back with us at the March meeting.
And I would say that we had some great candidates, and they all competed well and interviewed well. And so those that weren't selected will be in line to be looked at for future openings. So we had some good people. So anyway, thanks, Rick. All right.
And so, Chair, you do have a quorum, and all alternates can vote.
Okay. Thank you. I was going to say that's great. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
David Zelenak, so moved.
Thank you, Dave. Second.
Emily Magnuson, second.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for being online as well. I didn't do that. Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. Public comment period for items not on the agenda. Larry, you had one?
Yes. Larry Tobias, representative for El Paso County. I'd like to have a picture put up on the screen here in just a minute. What I'd like to do is recognize El Paso County and what they've been able to do as far as coming up with some additional capital funds to complete a project at the intersection of Rex and Meridian Road out in the Falcon area. This is a intersection that has been having traffic increase drastically over the years. It's one of those intersections that we see all the time that just doesn't work very well. The sight distances are bad. The intersection itself is not very well laid out. And so it gets real interesting going through there. And the county was able to, you may want to make some comments after I finish as far as where you were able to get the money in that, but they were able to bring together over $8.5 million for design and construction. And basically what they're doing here is to the left of this drawing, presently the road goes down from 4 lanes on South Meridian down to 2 before you get into this intersection. And then the intersection, both east and west, are really not aligned very well. And like I say, the sight distances are really bad on both South Meridian and North Meridian. And so with this project, they're going to be able to go through and redesign. And well, let me just clarify one thing. There is no PPRTA money involved in this project. And this is completely county funds that is funding this particular project. They will not be coming to the PPRTA for any funds. All the funding came from within the county itself. But it will be a very good improvement for this particular area. The unfortunate part is that it's going to have to be done in phases. They'll start early spring 2024. It won't be completed until late fall 2025. But as you can see, not only will signalized intersection be completed, but like I say, all, which doesn't show on this particular drawing, but all the sites differences on both the South and North Meridian will be taken care of to where people can actually see this intersection coming up. Right now, I drive this quite often because I just live north of here. And to the right here, there's it gets real interesting because just before you get to this intersection, there's a dip. And so you'll be going along, you can see this intersection ahead. All of a sudden you drop down, can't see the intersection. You come back up out of it, out of that dip, and all of a sudden here's cars going across east-west through this intersection. So with the sight differences and the signals, it's going to drastically, improve traffic movements in this area. So with that, I'd like to just turn it over to Jeff. Do you have any other additional comments?
Thank you, Vice Chair. No, I think you hit a lot of the key points of the project. We are very close to issuing our notice to proceed to our contractor. We're working through some scheduling issues with MVEA, who has some pretty substantial overhead lines on the west side. And by the way, if you're looking at this picture, to the right is north, and there's a pretty aggressive skew on Rex Road approaching the intersection from the west. So this project has been a target for action for us for a long time, and it will provide a lot of additional safety that is much needed in the area.
All right, thank you. Like I say, I just wanted to, let El Paso County know that they were able to come up with these funds and be able to complete a capital project that wasn't dependent upon PPRTA funds. Yes,
Question is I guess the east side, is that a through road?
yes.
Where's that go?
Actually, I better clarify that a little bit. That is Rex Road. Presently, approximately a mile east of this intersection, they have closed road signs up, even though the road is paved, and it goes all the way to Eastonville Road. So it is paved and connects with Eastonville Road on the east side.
All right, thank you, guys, for doing that. It's interesting because it is part of the regional transportation infrastructure, and even though RTA is not funding it, it does fit into the whole regional, and it's good to know, for us to know what's going on, especially a major intersection like this out there in the east. So thank you. All right, any other public comment? Anybody from the audience? All right. Let's move on to item number 4, approval of minutes from the January meeting. Do anyone have any questions, concern, corrections? If not, do I hear a motion to approve? Okay, thank you. Second, Larry, thank you. Any discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor of approving the minutes of last month's meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Financial reports. Lisa.
Lisa Corey, I'm the finance manager for the PPRTA. The sales and use tax are reported 2 months in arrears, so the month I'm reporting is for November of 23. We were above the amended monthly budget by $767,976. So that's great news. That equates to 6.4% above that monthly budget. I think it's safe to say at this point, we will meet our annual budget, hopefully exceed by quite a bit. November of 23 compared to November of 22, we did collect more in 23 than in 22 by $271,835 or 2.2%.
Okay,
Any questions?
any questions, Felisa? Good report, good money. Yes, sir, Dave.
No questions, but as always, great job, Lisa. Continue to astonish us with with the level of depth and detail you offer us. On the inflation, the construction cost index, are you getting to that or?
I can address that, yes. So,
Okay.
it's not easy to read. But this is pulled directly from CDOT's website. I did check again, like I do before.
It's
We sent
always
this out.
garbage.
Yeah, so I checked to see if they fixed it again and they didn't. So it's not, you can't really read the text, but I mean, just from looking at it, it looks like it's almost a flat line from the previous quarter. Maybe a little bit of a decrease. I know it's supposed to say the percentage of a decrease, but I can't read it.
Okay,
Most important thing, it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, is that the skyrocketing increase in costs that we were seeing a year or two ago is flattened out.
Yeah,
Is that fair to say?
yeah,
So that horror period is now behind us and we're back to kind of business as normal.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
well, we can hope that those material costs continue to decline going into next year's budget and construction phase. So hopefully that continues in that trend. Okay, item number 6, capital maintenance and public transportation contract, City of Colorado Springs. Ms. Gale.
Hello, Mr. Chair, Gail Sturdivant, City of Colorado Springs. Today, the city is presenting 13 contracts for the CAC's consideration. The first contract is for a bridge maintenance effort on 8th Street over Fountain Creek. There is a map included in your package. This contract would go to Alfred Benage and Associates based on social certification overseen by our procurement office for some detailed bridge analysis to see if we have any opportunities to do widening, both for improving vehicular movements there between Fountain Creek and US 24, and also to see if we can do multimodal improvements on there. The way this contract will be written, they're going to start off with an alternative analysis. If there is a viable option, then they would proceed with the engineering and provide construction support. This would be in the amount of $270,015.
Yeah. Gail, just a clarification, please. Is that bridge is right next to where you kind of hang a right to go on to 24th?
Yeah, so it would be, so the answer is yes. It is just to the south before you take that right turn to go towards 24, if
Right.
you were going to go towards the freeway. So what happens? So when CDOT came through and did that project, they really stopped short of addressing that bridge over Fountain Creek.
They fixed the creek bed, but they didn't do the bridge, right?
Right, they did not do the bridge. And really what happens now, if you're traveling northbound on 8th Street towards that intersection, you get kind of in a pinch point because you're going in 2-3 lanes north and there's a left turn lane. Then all of a sudden one of the lanes dead ends and goes to that right turn lane. Really what we're trying to do, and operationally we feel like there's a problem there. And we don't want to eliminate that left turn into that shopping center because it's really kind of the only way there if you're going north
Right.
to the westbound. So we want to look to see if there's options to improve how that whole intersection or that south side of that intersection operates, but that bridge is a constraint. The bridge is in relatively good shape. It does require some bridge maintenance. So we thought this was an opportunity, if it's possible, to widen the bridge, to do so at this time, and then fix some of the roadway operational issues in that area.
Okay. Yeah, that's a congested area, especially in certain times of the day. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions on that one? Otherwise, I'm going to talk about items 2 and 3 together. These are both Fillmore Street bridges. The first contract would be over Monument Creek and the second contract would be for the bridge over the Union Pacific Railroad. You may recall those who have been around before or looked at the PPRTA 3 A-list project list. These bridges are included as a project in PPRTA 3. The city has received some grant funding too to also help out with future replacement, but those bridges are in such poor condition that it's imperative that we do some bridge maintenance work on those bridges now. So we've gone through, we actually developed repair plans. I went through a bid process with our on-call bridge maintenance contractors and got bid prices for those. We want to award both these to TLM constructors. For the first bridge, the one over Monument Creek, that would be an award of $1,236,606. And for the one over the railroad is $1,151,821.20. There are maps included in your package, so you can see where those are shown or where those are located within the city. Questions about those two?
That one over the bike path in the river
Yeah.
or the creek there, those knuckles had collapsed 20 years ago when I used to ride my bike up down
They're
there.
still that way.
And so I'm going like, how long is it going to take? But yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so I will tell you though, we're not gonna, we have a repair plan in place to support that rocker. Right now, we're not gonna do that, so we may end up having to come and support that too, just to get us through replacement construction. But really, we have so many problems with the deck and the superstructure that we have to do some repair work now.
Let us know in plenty
Wear a
of time
helmet
because
if
you
you're
don't
ready.
want to be anywhere near that
Right, you
intersection. when
definitely
you're
want to
close.
wear a helmet when you're going through there. And I am not joking. One of the things we're actually gonna do is to do a net underneath just to catch debris from the bridge that's in such poor condition.
Traffic will be a nightmare.
It is gonna be a nightmare, so. All right, I'm gonna move on to contract number 4. We refer to this as the sidewalk infill program. The sidewalk infill program actually consists of 2 PPRTA A-list capital programs. It's the pedestrian improvements citywide and the school and neighborhood pedestrian improvements. Again, we refer to those as the sidewalk infill program. The city had gone through an RFP process to get a construction contractor. This is the 4th option year to go to even pricer for that. And we are choosing to award $1 million to them to help with these infill of sidewalks that are needed throughout the city. Contract number 5 is to provide closed circuit television inspections of pipes that are underneath the roadway system. We typically do this in particular before we're going to go do mill and overlay on a roadway. We want to make sure we know that the pipes are structurally sound underneath the roadway. We went through an RFP process. We actually have selected to put a contract in place with all 4 vendors. They are Lucky Dog Construction, Utility Maintenance and Inspection, DRC Construction, and Pipe View America. With these contracts in place, that would allow us to issue task orders as needed and infrastructure was identified that would require inspection so we can ensure the integrity of those pipes before we come through and do maintenance activities. I'm going to talk about contracts 6 through 11 together. We brought on-call concrete contracts for the PPRTA CAC and board's approval. This is really giving them the awards for work we want to assign to them for 2024 activities. So each of these, using the unit prices that were established through the process, they each are giving certain assignments based on their capabilities and capacity. And you can see the up to contract amounts associated with each of those values. But each of these 6 construction contractors will have this concrete work to do. And I can go through those and read them specifically if you have questions beyond what's listed in your blog. And then I'm going to move on then to contract 12. Contract 12 is for the Templeton Gap Trail Bridge concrete deck replacement, or it's a replacement of the deck. And Emily, I believe, is on board if you've got other specific questions beyond what or I guess Lana is on board in case there's specific questions beyond what I have. There's a map included in your packet. This project would be funded under the Templeton Gap Trail Improvements Program, which is on the PPRTA list. Right now, that particular bridge, which is located on the Pikes Peak Greenway near Mark Dabbling, has a wood deck that's deteriorated. With this project, the deck would be removed and they would be replacing it with a lightweight concrete decking. The award would go to SEMA Construction and the amount $329,039.50. And then I'm going to move on to the last one is for the fixed route bus system vehicle replacement. We bring all vehicle purchase to PPRTA regardless of the funding sources for our buses. You may recall several months ago, it was in the news, and I think we talked about it here, that Mountain Metro Transit received a federal discretionary grant referred to as the Low-No grant. And underneath that, they partnered with both Gillig and New Flyer to purchase hybrid buses, 3 from each vendor. So this grant was going to be picking up a fair amount of the costs associated with that. And so the Mountain Metro can proceed with 2 new pilots based on these hybrid buses. The local match for the grant funding, it comes from PPRTA transit funds in this case. We have finished the final contract negotiation with Gillig, which is I'm presenting to you today, and the total amount for that contract would be $2,754,672, and PPRTA funds would be funding $1,101,896. You will likely see a similar contract next month or the month after as they finalize the negotiations with the second vendor, which is New Flyer. Any questions about any of those contracts that I presented to you today?
Just a clarification question from my point, Gail, on you use the word hybrid. So does that still require a charger for those buses, or do they
Yes.
charge on their own?
They would still require a charger. So these don't? Oh, sorry. Some do and some don't. Apparently these don't. I apologize.
Okay, so they will charge from the gas engine that's in it as it needs it. Okay, all right, so we don't need to go down. Okay, great. All right, just clarifying.
Gail, how many more hybrid buses will be coming forward then?
So you'll have 3 more from New Flyer coming soon, hopefully next month. If not, I would anticipate within the next 2 months. I believe we are also trying to purchase one under a Gillig master contract that is outside of the ones we're purchasing with these federal funds. So right now we're looking at 7 immediately. Lane and her team are actually looking at a overall bus replacement program. I will tell you though, and we've talked about this before, we had our first 4 electric buses, the ProTerra. In fact, they've been in the news. We've had a plethora of challenges with them. ProTerra is now going bankrupt. Let's just say our initial pilot, I'm glad we were only doing a pilot, 1, and 2, but it was not actually super great results for us. So we actually have been leaning more towards this hybrid option. I think others in the industry are also leaning more to these hybrid options to look as we go towards low or no emission vehicles.
Will these new buses take the place of those electric ones you're having trouble with?
No. Well, it's all relative, let's be honest. So we currently have a claim with ProTerra, and we're also, Lan and her team are also working with FTA, and you may have to jump in, Lan, if I misspeak on this, but we are going to have to replace them. But because of the way the timing is purchased and the way we do bus replacement is somewhat regulated by FTA, particularly since we use FTA dollars to go through and do the purchase. Their team is actually asking for an exemption to start replacing those sooner because of the issues we've had. So this is not going to be a 1-for-1 replacement. These first 6 and then ultimately 7 hybrids, if we go to that 7th one, would be replacing other vehicles that are currently in our fleet. And then we'll be working on another replacement plan for 4 buses that may or may not be alternate fuels. Did I get that right? Shoo, she's not going to shoot me darts at me.
What's the main fuel other than electric?
I believe it's diesel, is that correct?
Sorry.
What's the main petroleum-based fuel? It is diesel, yes. And our buses are diesel, typically are.
Okay.
Other questions?
Any questions for Gail on the city's contracts? Any further discussion? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the contracts as presented by the city? So move. Thank you. Second, Barb, thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Motion carries. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
All right. Item 6B, El Paso County projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Manchester, representing El Paso County today. For your consideration, we have 7 contracts today going before the CAC, all of which are maintenance. Contracts 1 through 5, I'm just going to give a quick overview of those. Those are all material purchases to support the county's chip and crack seal programs, as well as graveling. Are there any questions on contracts 1 through 5? Hearing none, contract number 6 is it's a renewal for our last year of our multi-year asphalt overlay contract. This is up to $5 million with Martin Marietta. This is our last year. We'll be most likely bidding this multi-year maintenance paving contract again in the fall. Contract item number 7 is another multi-year maintenance program that we have. This is our 2024 pavement preservation contract. This is going to A1 chip seal, and this is to continue on with our slurry, cape seal, micro surfacing, and crack sealing. And with that, that's a brief overview of our contracts, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions? Jeff, on the slurry seal, how's that working? Is it holding up and you're getting good results from it?
We've had a lot of really good success with it. We are interested in even expanding our micro surfacing treatment. We did some in the Black Forest last season, and we had really good success with that as well. But we've been very pleased with our sealing programs, and it's actually helped a lot with our pavement condition survey scores that we received back. We're at almost a 70. I think we're at 69 right now, which we're very proud of.
So how, if my recollection is correct, that is kind of an interim step to resurfacing. And so what does that extend that surface to? Is it 5, 7, just roughly what? I know it varies by road and traffic and all that, but.
We're planning on a 5-year life with our slurry right now. I know they
Okay.
say 5 to 7 is the range. And the streets that we are targeting have to be within a certain PCI range. We're generally putting them on streets that have a PCI of 70 and above. So it's basically to preserve and keep our good roads in good condition. So
Keeps
they
the
don't
good roads good,
deteriorate
yeah.
very quickly. Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Jeff on the county's projects? Not seeing or hearing any, do I have a motion to approve the county's projects as requested?
Larry Tobias, I move for approval of the 7 maintenance items that Jeff presented to us today.
A second? Thank you, Greg. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the county's projects as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, 7A, Transit Services, Land. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Land Rail Transit Services Division Manager. In your packet is Transit's monthly report. I'm gonna go through the report relatively quicker today because we have a special guest from Transit who will be sharing our rider survey that was requested by this CAG earlier, actually late last year. So in your packet, it's our regular monthly report. This month's report does have the full year ridership information for 2023. We're very happy to report that we ended 2023 with 89% of our pre-pandemic ridership, which is partially thanks to our record high ridership this last summer that we saw. So those are the ridership information. We are still trending ahead of the national average of 77% as of November.
Good.
That is the latest information we have looking at the national information. Under the transit highlight section, we included some information about the cold weather transport. We were requested by the Office of Emergency Management during the cold weather event to transport unhoused population from different parts of the city or from one shelter location to another due to overcrowding. So we were very happy and glad to be part of that effort. We transported a total of 19 passengers over a few nights, and big thanks to our contractor Transdev staff members. We included a ridership comparison. This is the report that was requested by the board 2 months ago. We were able to include the full year information in this monthly report. The intent of this report is to look at a relatively apples to apples comparison. We selected the bus routes that had the same scheduled frequency and included that weekday ridership information based on that criteria. Again, even if those are scheduled to be basically run at the same with the same frequency, but due to either driver shortage or vehicle shortage, weather impact, the actual hours that we were able to carry out in those years could be different. But this is the best effort of an intent to try to have some level of apples to apples comparison. We do have more information behind that, but I'm going to jump to our rider survey. With that, I would like to introduce Tara.
Can I
Evans.
ask you one quick question before
sure.
you relinquish? How did you
Mhm.
find the 19 people? Did they find you or did you find them for your transit highlight number one?
The Office of Emergency Management is the central office who has who gathers requests from either shelters or they actually have a close communication in special events with CSPD,
Okay.
with
Yeah.
the front line.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So Tara is transit data analyst. We received a request to share our rider survey information late last year, but this report was delayed due to some challenges with the contractor. Tara really stepped up and basically gathered the raw information and was able to analyze and put them into the report with the information that we can share with you. So with that, Tara.
Perfect. Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Tara Evans, Mountain Metro Transit.
Welcome.
So, well, thank you. So our rider survey was conducted last May. And there's several reasons that we conduct rider surveys. It's so we can learn more about our passengers and how we can better serve them, what they need, how they use our service. It's also a federal requirement that is in relation to the Title VI program, where we are required by law, because we accept federal funds, to conduct a rider survey at least once every 5 years. MMT conducts our rider surveys every 3 years, and that's in association with our Title VI program update, so that we can use that information we gather to inform that program. It helps us to carry out our mission to provide safe, reliable transit by knowing who our riders are and how they use our service. This slide shows how the survey was conducted. The gray bar, the light gray bar, we conduct what was called a stratified random sampling. So routes at higher ridership, we tried to collect a higher target number of surveys. So the gray bar represents the annual ridership from 2022. The purple bar represents the number of surveys that were collected by each route, and the little golden diamond represents our target. So we were able to achieve our target number of surveys on 17 out of 33 routes. And we did have we had 23 out of 33 that had an 80% of our target. So we were able to achieve a random sampling survey that represents our riders with a 95% confidence level plus or minus 5% margin of error. The survey was designed with 29 questions and they covered 4 main areas. Who rides our service? How did they get to and from transit? What do they use our service for? And then how well are we serving their needs? Some of the key results we found out, we discovered, this is a slide shows the breakdown of the gender by age. The 2020 survey, which was the previous survey conducted, revealed that we had a higher degree of males riding versus females. And when we looked at the satisfaction questions, we found that females reported not feeling as safe at our bus stops and our transit facilities as the males. And so over the last 3 years, we've made efforts to address that concern. We added amenities to our stops and lighting, and we have a different contractor now that is responsible for the maintenance of these bus stops. So they are looking much sharper and cleaner. The results of this rider survey is that gender gap is shrinking. We're now 5 males to 4, so females, so slightly more male, but that gap is closing. And so that might be an indication that those changes in the bus stops have been effective. Our service is essential to the community. Only a quarter of our riders have their own vehicles, so only 1 in 4 have access to a car. More than half of our riders earn less than $25,000 for their entire household, regardless of household size. So they tend to be low-income riders. More than a third would be unable to travel if MMT did not exist, is what our respondents indicated. 1 in 10 of our riders are students, either high school or college, and they use our service to reach a variety of locations: work, school, shopping, recreation, medical, a number of purposes. More than half of our riders pay for their fares with a single ride or cash ticket, so 55%. And if you'll notice, the yellow represents those that are eligible to ride a reduced fare for 85 cents, which is our youth, our seniors, and disabled or Medicare riders. And then the regular fare is just the adult fare, which is $1.75. Really interesting result of the rider survey is nearly a third of our riders have tried our mobile ticketing app at Ride MMT, which is relatively new. And so that was really exciting to see. It was important for us to know how our riders receive information about MMT, because as we do service changes and have other non-planned service changes, weather related and such, we want to know how our riders are getting information so we make sure we can inform them. So this chart shows how the different riders receive information about our services. So you can see that no matter the age group, everyone uses the bus drivers, the terminal supervisors, calling into customer service. That's that dark blue bar at the bottom. Most of our riders also will use the printed schedules. A little higher use as people get older on those, but everyone uses those. You'll notice that radio and TV that's only used by our very most senior riders. So very little usage outside of that. And then I thought it was interesting that the website is used by all age groups. That's a pretty even width bar there. So that's fabulous, regardless of the age. And then you'll notice on the green bar that our younger riders are the ones that use the apps and the other web-based sources more often. So the big takeaway from all that is that we should continue to use a variety of methods to inform our riders, because they're gathering information about us from a variety of sources. We also wanted to see how well we're serving the needs of our riders. So we asked some customer satisfaction questions. You'll see that Of all the questions we asked, our lowest score was a 3.64. This is on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being excellent and 1 being poor. And so our lowest scores, nothing lower than a 3.64. The average score was a 4.04, so that's pretty good. And then our highest strengths were in our fares and transfers, the courtesy of our bus drivers, the value of the service and the quality of the service, and then the safety of the buses. But where we do have some room for improvement on some of those lower scores, as we mentioned, the cleanliness of the facilities and the bus stops. Then the availability of weekend service and the frequency of the service. And we have added a lot of weekend and evening service over the past year or so. So these complaints, when you dig down deeper into the comments, was really a lot of people that work outside the hours that we operate. They were asking, a little earlier in the morning. We don't operate quite as early or quite as late on the weekends as we do on the weekdays. So it's not that they wanted more routes or more coverage, really. It was just the timing. They just would wish those hours were a little longer. We took a look at what our average rider looks like. They are low income. 60% of our riders are white and not Hispanic or Latinx. Mostly they speak English, but we do have about 6% of our riders that speak Spanish at home. Nearly 90% of our riders have a smartphone. That's probably why we've seen such a good response to that Ride MMT app. They are mostly employed either full or part-time. They walk to reach transit. As we mentioned, few of them have a car. Primarily, they work in the leisure and hospitality industry, so lots in the fast food and restaurant services or hotels. Only 57% of our riders do not have higher than a high school education, but we do have another 38% that have some degree of some college experience. And they indicate primarily that if we did not exist, they would have to walk to reach their destinations. And the average trip based on the rider perception is about 56 minutes. We also looked at our riders by how they use transit. So, and then we are able to delve in deeper to that. So we classified them either as an all-purpose rider who rides the bus often for several different reasons, a sole purpose rider who really only rides, they still ride often, but really for primarily only one reason. And then we have the occasional rider who just every once in a while will use it. And then we have visitors and first-time folks. And so you can see the breakdown there, nearly 70 or more than 75% are either the sole purpose or the all purpose. And then that other quarter is made up of first times and just the occasional riders. And that's what I have. Do you have any questions for me?
Carlos?
Yeah, Carlos Perez on the CDC tab. Yeah, I see that looks like the bus stops really are just pulling everything down. That is a common complaint, is that the bus stops, and when I get on transit, those bus stops just are terrible. There's no shade. There's weeds everywhere. Tell us kind of what the plan is to address that. Maybe we can pull that score up. And of course, we need to, by cleaning up the bus stops, we should be able to pull that up. Do you have a plan for that?
I do know that we have our latest contractor, which is fairly new, is so on top of things. They were just talking about this in our meeting yesterday, that when they report, like, for example, there was ice at stops, they were out there within a couple of hours to remove that ice, clean up trash. So we've already taken steps to address that. Some of our bus stops, they're just not conducive. If there's no sidewalks, we can't really put in a bench. It will just sink into the mud. So there's certain areas where we can't provide all the amenities, but anywhere we can, we do try and have at least a bench. Shelters are based on the ridership on the route, also the advertising potential of the location. So that varies, but we do put them where we can. We have occasionally had to remove them because of some concerns with homeless folks, but most of the time, if the ridership warrants it, we and the conditions allow, we have shelters and have had a lot of those over the last 3 years as well.
Yeah, some of those I've noticed up around in north end of town, Woodman and Academy. There are folks that are the homeless that are sleeping in these, and as a potential rider, that would probably discourage me from waiting for a bus, knowing that there's people that have got their stuff all piled up behind the glass and kind of laying around sleeping. And not that they're bad, I'm not passing judgment, but if you're a female and you're probably not real excited about standing around not knowing who's around you and what's going on. So I've noticed that on the north end a little bit. So you got people working on that? I mean,
Well, as far as, I don't know that if it's public space, so we can, riders can always call in a complaint to the police or a welfare check if that's required. I do know you may have noticed that many of our benches now have a bar through the middle so that people
You
can't
can't
comfortably
lay down.
lay down on them. And so that's to try and also discourage homeless folks from using that as a shelter.
sure. Barb?
Is that good?
Yes.
This may be like comparing apples and oranges, but I do get up to Denver occasionally too. And I know the RTD system is always under tremendous duress in that community at large. And do we do any comparative studies with other communities to see how we're faring with your survey?
There was not any specific questions about transit in other areas. There's a lot of information that we can either pull from APTA or CASTA, some of these organizations that have some information. When I was looking for like APTA's latest rider survey, I haven't seen much since before COVID, so that was kind of tough. We do have, more peer-sized agencies that we compare to, a lot more than Denver, because they are so different than what we are.
Right. And is there, I think more to my point I was trying to make, are there some improvements that we can draw from other communities to aid us in improving our system?
I believe that there's always things that we can learn from our peers. As far as this rider survey, we're still, Lan mentioned we had a little trouble with the contractor, and so we're still finishing up the full analysis. This is some of the high points that we've already hit on, but that is something that we want to look at more, is the comparison with other agencies. Some of the comparisons we're looking at are, definitely our service area in general. How do our, for example, our racial breakdown or our gender breakdown compare to our city in general and our service area in general? And then also national trends. But I think that maybe we can look at some of those peer agencies and see if they've got a rider survey that's recent, that we could do some comparison and see if they're seeing the same issues with why ridership might differ among different groups.
And in fact, just add on, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, the Vermont Metro Transit is very involved in CASA, which is the Colorado Association of State Transit Administrators. And hopefully, there'll be a new board member sometime in the near future that has direct NMT representation. But Lan and her team use that to help collaborate with a lot of those other transit agencies. And they're a great resource to share those kind of best practices and things along that lines.
Great, thanks.
Dave?
Great survey. Thanks for doing this, Lan, always to the great work you're doing. What surprised me, and maybe to Barb's point, other cities have information like this, that the average ride is about an hour.
Now that's based on perception, but it is not unusual and I'm looking back at 2020 statistics now, but like the average commuter time for someone in the car at the time was 21 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's not unusual for transit to be 2 to 2.5 times longer than the average car commute. So I think we feel like it seems like we're right about in the ballpark for what's kind of normal.
It's good to know. It's good information. It's just,
Yeah.
to me, shocking that if you're looking for a reason why people are reluctant to take transit.
Yeah.
To your point, exactly.
Exactly.
And this is where Barb was going. 20 minutes for a car ride, an hour on the bus.
It makes a big difference. And I think that's why most of our riders are those that don't have the car option
Yeah.
and
The transit.
kind of have to deal with the inconvenience.
You don't want to miss the bus.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
along that line, while this survey was of existing passengers, is there any intent or thought to survey the community of non-existing riders and what the demand might be or the desire might be for expanding it beyond the existing route? And I know that requires funding and that, but in order to go down that road to achieve the funding, you kind of got to know the demand. And so is the current mentality, and you'll hear this later during our long-range planning thing for transit, but my thought is that do we have some thoughts to survey the non-rider community and what the desire or the demand might be to expand transit?
The direct answer is yes. We are very interested in reaching out. We have actually since last year, we have made a deliberate effort reaching out to different groups, and we are gathering inputs from not necessarily this survey is focused on current riders, trying to understand our current rider information. But yes, we gather that information, and there are different ways, whether it's through the web, from community events, from outreach efforts, and also in our long-range transit plan process. And those are very valuable inputs in our service development and also our long-range resource allocation. Yes.
Thank you,
Lynn.
Lynn. Thank you. Barb?
Having been in the community for more than 50 years now, that's telling, isn't it?
She was born here.
Unfortunately, that's not the case. You know, in past time, we've all gone through, or many of us have gone through that age of carpooling, van pooling, and all that iteration. I would think, to your point about surveying non-riders, is perhaps using employers as your outlet to serve as a basis for some of your surveying efforts in that regard. So
good point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A great report.
Jim?
Thank you for doing that. Yeah, questions, Brandy?
Well, I want to say good job. Thank you. I know we've been asking this for a while, and I don't know if you volunteered or if you were voluntold, but either way, you brought this to fruition. 29 questions. That's pretty impressive. That's long attention span for anyone these days. So the fact that you had that many responses and really got them to go through the whole step was really good. Did you get any feedback on whether they liked the Ride MMT app or just whether or not they used it?
On this one, we did not ask about their satisfaction with that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what our customer service has, the feedback they've got has been positive. There are a few who have a question or need some help with their account, but the usage rate and how quickly it took off, I think, is a really good indication that people are liking that.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Greg?
Yeah. I'm a little fuzzy on the timeline. This was done before the fare-free period that we were doing.
That
this
is
summer.
correct.
Is that right?
This was
Okay.
conducted during the week of it was 10 days, 12 days between May 3rd and May 14th.
Okay. Okay.
So yes, it was before free fare. Our student population was maybe underrepresented because it happened during the week of PPSC's graduation. The rider survey 3 years ago happened in March. So that 1 in 10 may be lowballing our student ridership.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Great report. Thank you very much for that effort, and Lan, thank you and your
Thank you.
staff for putting that together. Thank you very much. All right, item 7B. Rick, you want to kick this one off?
Just a little introduction, please. On both the 7B and 7C, the what we're calling the IGAs for advanced funding of PPRTA 3 capital projects. At last month's board meeting, the board gave this a thumbs up in concept, but then directed the board attorney, Jennifer Ivey, to prepare the actual IGA document. She prepared it. It was sent, the city one went to the city attorney's office as well as Gail. The county one went to Josh Palmer as well as the county attorney. So these have been fully reviewed by the attorneys on all sides and staff. So that's my intro, and then Gail can cover the specifics of hers, and Jeff Manchester can cover the specifics of the county one.
All right, great. Thanks, Gail Sertman, the City of Colorado Springs. I will add just a big brush that the reimbursement agreement for an advance of PPRTA 3 funds was modeled after the same terms and conditions that were agreed to for the powers reimbursement agreement. It's just between PPRTA and the city, or PPRTA in El Paso County. So for this city-specific request for, there are 2 PPRTA 3 projects, both on Nevada Avenue. One stretch runs from Rock Island Railroad to Comma Street, and the other one runs from Comma Street to Templeton Gap. Those projects are going to have a right-of-way need in the future. That property the owner of that property is currently BNSF Railway. After years of discussion with BNSF Railway about this property, all of a sudden they're ready to sell, and they want to sell like right now. So it was an opportunity for the city to go in and make that purchase, and we wanted to do so in advance before they started looking for other buyers. The good news is we've had appraisals, in addition to appraisals done by the railroads, and the appraised value comes at $3.1 million. We have verbally agreed to that purchase price. So really now it was coming up with the funding. For this funding, parts of it in the future, we would turn over to Colorado Springs Utilities because it's also adjacent to the Birdsall Power Plant. And one of the things they would like to do is use that property to help for more protection around that power plant. But that would leave a bulk of the property for the city to be able to use for the transportation projects. Unfortunately, the timing wasn't great for us to have funding available to go through and do it. So it's when we started approaching PPRTA, is it possible to start advancing funds to get this purchase now while we have the opportunity at a decent price for that property and doing so. We would have, so again, the purchase price would be $3.1 million. The city is getting some funding from Colorado Springs Utilities, since we'll be turning a portion over to them in the future. So that would leave the bulk of the remaining costs of up to $2.6 million. So what we are asking for the CAC's consideration is to allow PPRT and the city to enter into a reimbursement agreement to reimburse us for actual real estate costs associated with purchasing the project now, and be reimbursed for those costs in 2025 once funding is available under PPRTA 3. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to the city's specific request.
Any questions from anybody? And just for making sure that it's clearly stated, this purchase would have been needed in 2025 for the project anyway. We're just doing it early, so it's not independent. It's related to the project.
It is absolutely related to the project.
Okay.
And I will, the urgency with this, again, with BNSF wanting to sale, just to share some of the other timelines, we're actually taking this document in parallel with PPRTA CAC and the board, which will meet next Wednesday. On Monday, I will be taking this to City Council, the reimbursement agreement, the appropriations I have to do from a city process, along with the purchase authorization to council.
Carlos and then Barb.
Yeah, Carlos Perez, no, I definitely support this. I will be voting for it. I just wanted to know how this was going to be, continue to be reported back to the CAC and board. I do know in the past, we've had these loans and things, and they're kept internal or in-house within the PPRTA administration. But I was wondering if this could be, how this would be reported, like in our financial packages, because we also have the Copper Ridge. And these are pretty big, these can be pretty big line items.
Answer this.
You have an answer.
Your quarterly report is going to start seeing these projects.
So the quarterly report.
The quarterly report will start seeing the projects. I would say from a financial report standpoint, Lisa doesn't have any financial accounts for these. These are just future commitments. But as we're finalizing the quarterly report for Q4, you'll see Mark Shuffle in there, which we had, I think, the previous quarter, if not 2 quarters. You'll see the initial. It won't have as much detail, but it'll have the initial one for powers. And we're going to start, I just got the first reimbursement request from the Metro District actually yesterday. They need a little work, so we're going to work through them to make sure to do it. But what my intent is probably won't happen next month, but maybe in April, as I'm gonna prepare an informational item for Rick to put in their packets that will have where we are in accounting on expenditures for powers, and then you'll see it in the quarterly report. And then as we get Nevada, you probably won't see as much in Nevada because not really anything active going on that, but we'll do the same reimbursement request. And I can do a one-time informational since it's a one-time purchase and associated real estate recording costs.
And when you say Nevada, the North Nevada
Yes.
reimbursement, yeah, because and of course the powers, as you know, and also North Nevada, those are two of the largest, or in terms of expenditures for PPRTA 3. So it'd be good to put this in a disclose it here, these encumbrances or these IOUs or however you want to do it. It's just because of the long lead time. It's like, okay, 3 years from now, oh, we need to reimburse the city on this, and then just have that in there up in either our financial reports. The quarterly reports are also a good place to
Right.
do that, but it's more of a disclosure. Just keep it in one place. That would
It's
be
not going to be in your financial reports, to be clear. You'll get, the city will be preparing an informational item because we are responsible for keeping track of that and providing that to PPRTA. And then we're responsible for in the future, along with the county on powers, to budget the funds to be able to fulfill the requirements of those agreements. Correct?
very good. Thank you.
Just a side note question, Gail. I work with what was formerly Comcor. And in that stretch of Nevada, is that going to impact their property that sits along Roberts Road?
You know, I could be happy to look at a map with you afterwards. I don't think so.
Because they're very close to the
Yeah,
power.
this is, I know that we've looked at the roads around there because I think Roberts Road, I believe, sits on the south side of the power plant. Is that correct?
It's on the west side of the power plant.
Okay, on the
It's
west, but it's still
Paralleling
south of the,
Nevada.
okay, I'll have to look at that, on that road.
I think that's what they call
Okay,
Roberts Road.
I'm not remembering
their
that one
address.
specifically, but I will tell you, this is currently BNSF property that we don't use. There's no road on it. There's nothing there. So our intent is not to impact the private properties in that area. It's just to purchase this former railroad right away for use.
So no
for the
work to be done
No.
anytime immediately.
So
And I would suspect anything particularly close to the power plant, I know utilities would have a big landscape
Right.
buffer around it for their.
I believe Roberts is a north-south road between that railroad
Right.
property and the power plant, and it goes to that Saia truck place where the trucks go back there. I think that's Roberts, but
I know we've been doing some coordination with Colorado Springs Utilities more about those roads around the power plant, but
Right.
this would really give them a buffer more from that Nevada side. And so
Okay.
I don't anticipate being changes right now.
okay. Jeff, you want to, or you want to kick off the county or?
No, Mr. Chair, it's Jeff's turn. Did you want to have a vote on the city? by itself?
Yes, let's go ahead and do the vote on the city's IGA. Any further discussion? Anybody online? Welcome, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, so all those in favor of approving the city's IGA for as presented, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, need a motion in a second.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we approve this.
Thank you, David. I appreciate you
Yes.
keeping me straight. All right, thank you. Thank you, Alan. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Okay, very good. Jeff, you want to do county?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I feel like my job is pretty easy at this point since most of the framework has already been painted. The county's interest is to advance design and preparation of bid documents and also studies for the Baptist Hodgin Roller Coaster Road Safety Improvements Project. We are looking to complete the majority of that in 2024 so that we can advertise and award the construction contract at the kickoff of PPRTA 3 or in 2025. We're estimating the project to be around total cost of the project to be around 6 or 7 million. So at this point in time, we're requesting around the $600,000 or $700,000 mark to kick off design and complete those efforts. And with that, I can take any questions the board may have.
Larry?
Jeff, well, first of all, I support this proposal. But I do have a concern in the fact that at this time in PPRTA 2, we only have 10 and a half months left in PPRTA 2. When I look at the reports from Lisa, we've got a couple major projects that are listed, including Beacon Light Road, Eastonville Road. We do finally have 105 off the and going. But when I look at the numbers here of how much has been allocated or spent so far through almost 10 years, we're only at 31%. And I guess I'm a little bit concerned, are we going to pull resources from PPRTA projects, which we need to keep moving on to do this intersection design? I agree with you, that intersection is not one of the better ones in the county. It's going to be interesting because on what you come up with on design, because on one corner, you've got an El Paso County DOT maintenance shop. And then on the other corner, you have a house and several buildings associated with that house. So it's going to be a challenging design for that intersection. But I think overall, it sort of falls the same way as with Rex and Meridian, is that, some of those sight distances really can improve, that intersection. But what I'm concerned about is, like I say, we've only got 10 and a half months left for PPRTA 2, but we're only at 31% expenditures on all the PPRTA 2 projects. Is there any way to speed up Beacon Light Road, Eastonville Road? I know we've got 105 underway, so there's no way to speed that up. But especially like with Eastonville, it's amazing the amount of traffic that's on that road anymore. And with it just being a chip and seal in part of it, gravel in other parts, after a storm like what we just had, boy, does that road take a beating, as far as with the traffic. And as indicated earlier in my presentation, the Rex and Meridian Road intersection, Rex Road will go all the way through to Eastonville, which will even, increase the traffic more on Eastonville. I'm not sure when the builder is going to open that up, but as I indicated before, that road is all the way paved from Meridian all the way out to Eastonville. They just have some road closed signs up, which, okay, I won't say anything, but I did go around the construction signs just to see, to see if the road was complete. So I did drive the whole thing. So it is available. I'm not sure when the builder will, actually open it up. So I guess, like I say, I support this, but on the other hand, we need to keep going with these projects that we have in PPRTA and see if we can't get some of those, completed in 2024 also.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And I definitely understand your concerns. I will say that, prior to our recommendation of entering into this agreement, we did our homework and the bandwidth is available for a project manager to take this and advance it. Actually, the same project manager that's in charge of Beacon Light. And with that one, we are at 100% design. We're a little bit tied up with Douglas County, trying to get a sliver take from them on that project. But right now, and I think with your figure, the 31%, there most likely is a little bit of a lag in that reporting. In the last couple of months, just with South Academy, Highway 105, a lot of our big projects, our burn rate and expenditures have been very high. So I assume that, within the next quarter or so, you're going to see that figure jump. And then
Excuse me just a second. I will clarify that, Jeff. And the report from Lisa is actual numbers as of December 31st, 2023. So yeah, we're, almost a month and a half behind with this 31% that I had indicated
Right.
showing on the report.
Right. And I will add too that the county's funds are going directly into basically these contracts. So this is all local funding, non-PPRTA money that we're putting up now. So it's not necessarily competing with PPRTA 2 priorities. But we have been very aggressive with getting our last PPRTA projects moving. And we feel pretty confident this calendar year will be pretty far along.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Brandy?
This is either gonna add a level of comfort or be a really hard question, but are all of the other PPRTA 2 projects designed?
We have Highway 105, some future phases that we are looking to move forward to get concurrence that those will be completely funded per, I think it's policy 32. I could be mistaken. But that's really the last project that we have, and those are future phases of Highway 105. So phase 1 is in construction now. We are looking to lock in numbers on those future phases of 105.
And
That's really the last one.
that would be all that's left for PPRTA 2.
Some portions of Eastonville are remaining. However, we have developer obligations that are kicking in certain portions, specifically between Londonderry and Rex. But those phases are moving forward in almost a complete design.
Any other questions? I will just say that we'll do this, make a recommendation for approval. But I just say for some of the newer members, this issue of paying ahead for design of projects in the next 10-year group comes up about every 10 years in order to not have a lull of waiting until 25 funds to start design something. You got to kind of pay it forward. So this is not the first time we've done this. It's just been 10 years. So this is not totally out of the question. So, okay. So I have a recommendation to approve the county's request for the IGA for advanced funding on their project. I'm looking for a motion now.
Larry Tobias, I move to approve the IGA as presented by Jeff.
Do I have a second? Barb, thank you. Any other discussion? Anybody online?
No.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Item 7D, letter of spring support for bridge investment grant application. Gail?
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chair. Gail Student City, Colorado Springs. The city is pursuing one of the federal discretionary grants under the Bridge Investment Program. Underneath this grant, we would be going under the planning portion of it to really start to position that project to get future federal dollars for construction. We're going to be asking for the money for the Academy Bridge over Platte Avenue, which is currently a PPRTA B-list project. It's a bridge that's included in another project that would be mostly associated with that. Regardless, we would be pursuing, asking one for a letter of support for PPRTA now. With that, we would also be understanding that PPRTA would be providing some financial component of that. Our total grant ask is going to be for $1.5 million. And Rick did pass out a correction about it. We're going to be offering to pay 50% local match to make us more competitive with that. So we would be planning to use $750,000 from our emergency bridge fund. So really what I'm asking for is a letter of support and understanding that with that letter of support, there is a potential for some funding commitment that the city would include in their budget underneath the program.
Dave?
Absolutely support the notion, the idea, the concept, the project. The question I have is, refresh my memory, Gail. At one point, there was some community discussion, I'd say some spirited discussion over replacing the bridge with an at-grade intersection. Maybe I misunderstood that.
So you might be mixing a couple different things, but the notion's there.
Yeah.
So underneath the Platte Avenue corridor study, one of the options that was looked at the Platte and Academy intersection
And
was
that's
a
this
quadrant. It's the same, the bridge, yes, it goes over that same intersection. At that intersection, there had been the concept of the quadrant intersection.
Right?
Whether that happens or not, that would have to be mostly developer driven with the redevelopment of the quadrants around there. Regardless, there's still Academy Boulevard's still gonna go over Platte Avenue.
Thank you.
And so I've
Okay.
got to do something with the bridge no matter what.
Okay.
And that bridge happens to be in that same vintage as Fillmore and the other Academy bridges the academies have, or that the county's having fun with. And we just feel like it's important to start getting that positioned to get replaced.
So you can graciously, for the record, state that the intent at this point is to replace a grade separation with a grade separation.
That is correct.
Thank you. I'll support that.
So two questions came to mind when I read this was, what's wrong with the bridge? So are you nothing at the moment, right? But we're anticipating in
You
the,
want a geeky answer or a, okay.
no,
Portions of the bridge components are in some portions are in poor condition. Some of them are in fair condition. If you look at the bridge holistically, we really need to position it for replacement in the not too distant future.
not too distant being 10 years.
That could be 10 years, but I'm actually positioning this project to pursue federal dollars.
Okay, and so how would that link in if we remember on the Platte Avenue corridor study, there was a fairly considerable proposal to redesign that whole section along there.
Right.
So this would fit into that plan or
It fits in whether it
complement-
stays as it is today or you go through that plan in the future. That
Okay.
bridge needs to be replaced regardless. It still would be grade separated in the future. Instead of having ramps, it would have an at grade.
circle or something.
Really, it truly is a quadrant. I can show you an example of that, but not even a co-relief. Nope, it's nothing I've never seen before, ever. I will show you a picture. Regardless, that bridge needs to be replaced because Platte and Academy will stay grade separated.
Okay,
What was contemplated in the Platte corridor study was replacing the ramps with a different side street configuration.
yeah, I remember that. Okay, all right. Okay, I was just concerned about, we're trying to design a replacement for something that ain't broke. And I was
No, it needs some work.
okay,
This is the right time to be proactive on
Be
replacing a
proactive,
major
okay.
bridge.
okay. Any other question, Barb? All right, so we have a motion to have a second.
I can second that.
David, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the letter to the letter that they're asking for, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, 7F, monthly, Colorado Springs monthly change order acquisition report. And also 7G, they're both informational. They're in your packet. Any-
The E.
Oh, E, I checked it off already. Oh, maintenance of effort reports.
We haven't done
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I've already checked it off.
As the CAC is aware, the establishing IGA contains language that has been shortened to be called the maintenance of effort provision. And the board recently with CAC input changed the base year from 2004 to 2017. This is for the member governments non-RTA spending of the base year 2017 compared to their non-RTA spending in the new budget year of 2024. So these reports are from each of the 6 member governments declaring that each is declaring that they are complying with the maintenance of effort provision. So they're for your review, and if you have any questions for each of the member governments.
Any questions for member governments or the report as is in our packet? I have a motion to approve the maintenance of effort letters from the member governments. Anybody?
Larry Tobias, I move to approve.
Thank you. Second. Thank you.
Ideally.
Okay. All those in favor making the recommendation to the board to approve the letters, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you very much. All right. Back to 7F and 7G. The monthly change order and property acquisition reports for the city and the county. Any questions of our city and county reps on anything in those reports? Okey doke. Not seeing any. Does anybody need a break? Right, not seeing anything. I guess if you're online, you can just mute yourself and go, right? All right, 8A, report of board actions. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of highlights in the memo in the packet. The board selected its 2024 chair, County Commissioner Holly Williams, and vice chair is Colorado Springs City Council member Dave Donaldson, and kept me on as board secretary for another year. Looking down the list, I think that's about it for the highlights, unless CAC members have any question about my memo.
Okay. 8B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Drum roll. So this is the EV charger issue has been referred to the CAC from the board after a little introductory discussion at the last board meeting. Now I'll get to some of the highlights of my memo. I'm not going to read every line of every attachment, but some of the key elements here are first is whether or not EV charger, the installation of EV chargers is eligible under the RTA state law. And that's an attachment. That's the one that has the yellow highlights. So that's the first hurdle is looking at the yellow highlights. Any improvement that permits people or goods to be transported or conveyed within a region by any means, or any equipment that is appurtenant to or related to any improvement that permits people or goods to be transported or conveyed within a region by any means. And this is taken from the definition section of the RTA state law. So it appears to me, and you can each have your own judgment, and then ultimately the board can have its own judgment as to whether or not the state law is broad enough to allow any RTA to spend money on EV chargers. My interpretation would be yes, it's extremely broad. Number two is capital, is the definition of capital. If you're installing a brand new EV charger, that's presumed to be capital as opposed to maintenance. So if the CAC and the board declare that these would be capital, then the CAC and the board, the PPRTA, is limited to the capital projects that are voter approved in PPRTA 2 and PPRTA 3. So as you start thinking about this and having your discussion today, please keep in mind that it's most likely that you're limited to the voter approved capital project names. Number 3 is that the board chair, Holly Williams, is allowed to, under the PPRTA board bylaws, to call a special meeting. So she has called a special meeting, and when we get into the discussion, I'll hand out hard copies to each of you. She's called a special joint board and CAC meeting for 2:30 next week in this room at the end of the board meeting that starts at 1:30. So 2:30-ish. We'll probably revise the seating so that the board and the CAC can have a joint meeting next Wednesday at 2:30. Another major highlight is this is anticipated to take to be a 2-month process. Discussion today. All we're trying to come up with is to see if the CAC has a majority opinion of elements of a policy. We're not trying to approve a policy because you don't have a draft policy to read today. So that's probably the second or even the third month. So all we're trying to get in this discussion is elements toward a policy. Let's see. Looking at my memo, then we get into the attachments. So one of the attachments after the state law is the one from City College Springs. There's the middle for a PPRTA 3 project that was submitted to the CAC and the board in July of 2022. And I've put an arrow on the highlight for one of the capital projects, which is Mountain Metro's Transit Fleet Supplement. And in the detail on the right, the detail on the right is not voter approved. It was not on the ballot, but that this shows the city's intent for how they want to use the voter approved wording of Transit Fleet Supplement. And as you'll see in there, it contains the word charge, to fuel and charge diesel, gasoline, and any low or zero emission vehicles, including supporting infrastructure. So that's another piece of information for you to consider as for your discussion today. Then the other attachments are just thoughts of a progression of from low to high, from conservative to generous on funding the EV chargers. The one with the red ink is Gail Sturtevant's comments on my initial list. And then we have just some sample summary comments in case the discussion gravitates, in case those help the direction of the discussion. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair for any introductory comments he has, and then he'll open it to the floor.
So, well, I guess I will open it up to discussion and thoughts. So what Rick has provided you in one of those lists are what would be qualifying criteria? What would qualify as a place to put an EV charger? Where would you put them? And so that is a list of potential facilities and whatever. Again, we would have to make sure that it was associated with an A-list project in order for that to be accommodated. And if you were using a program fund, you'd have to do some pretty stringent tying it into to something in order to use capital as a new install, or if you're replacing an old one, is that maintenance? And then how far do we go down that road of, I gotta upgrade the feed line to get it there, this, that, and another. So what's in your packet is a list of potential places that you could use chargers. You also get into the issue of, and I think, Land, correct me if I'm wrong, but the federal transportation says that if you've got a public charger for something and you use federal funds, you have to collect a fee. Is that correct? So if an organization uses federal funds to place a charger in a place, somebody's got to collect a fee for that. So how does that engage with, how does the RTA engage with that fee collection process? Or is that up to the entity that's paying for it? And, you know, so you get into to that issue of deciding that. So what you have before you is list of Rick's hypothetical list of places. Gail has provided kind of from the city's perspective with the marked up version. And then I'll throw out, well, let's hear what you guys think about this, and then I'll throw out another option. So anybody have any ideas or thoughts? Cindy?
This is out there, but I don't think EV chargers should be PPRTA funded. It feels to me like they are fueling. They're like, we're filling gas for vehicles. This is just charging vehicles. I don't think it should be included, is my thought.
Okay. Anyone else?
This is Ann in Green Mountain Falls.
Go ahead, Ann.
I agree with Cindy. I feel like if they want to have charging stations and so forth, it should be done by private enterprise. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Kathy. There you go.
The beginning with the original PPRTA, the general perception that the voters approved was that this was going to be infrastructure and maintenance of infrastructure and maintenance of the transit process. The few people that I've talked to about this since getting the packet and kind of reading through it, as I'm saying, this could be a really interesting meeting, my first one, because we're talking about the EV charging. And with no exceptions, people have said to me, no, that's a utility. That's not PPRTA.
Okay. And so I'll share my thought. And Rick, I mean, you want to come up and say something? You said you wanted to. Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Here we are. I went through this and I liked the way it was laid out because I was able to go through these questions, this list, and I answered each one of them as to whether I would go to the library and park and expect to have a gas station to fill me up. Or would I do it before I went to the library or do it after the library? I don't see why I should expect RTA to furnish me options of refueling my vehicle while I'm at the library. So if we're going to put in a charger, then I think we ought to have a gas pump right next to it. That way we're treating everybody the same. So I went down through this entire list. I did not get a yes on a single one of them. And so then I went on, and I'm glad I did that before the city, because the city and I agree on 100%.
That's recorded for public record, yeah.
And the other thing is that, I really believe that RTA doesn't want to get into this mess. If the Ford Corporation is now sending, I think, 17,000 workers from the EV F-150 plant, transferring them to the F-150 gas and diesel plant. Also, the Rick mentioned to the other day is that most of your car rental companies are getting rid of what, did you say 60% of their, yeah, thousands of their EV vehicles because they're not being used. I really believe, and I think that the trend toward EV is on its way out. When it costs you $60,000 to get a new battery, and the fact that the battery is more dangerous to destroy, to get rid of than nuclear waste, then I think we're headed in a direction that we don't want to invest in. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. So go ahead.
We talked earlier about mass transit and doing the survey and the population that couldn't really get to work unless they had it, or they would have to walk. If you did a survey, I think of EV owners, you're talking like high income people for the most part. So we're actually making an effort to help them. It's like subsidizing them on taxes and stuff. It's like, why are we giving them extra breaks?
Okay, so here's kind of my thoughts. And we can go through this discussion and have a thing about when, where, and high. I agree. I don't think this fits within, to Kathy's point, the purview of what the citizens approved for transportation improvements and transit and infrastructure. It does help a small portion of the population. I think we're all smart enough to know that this whole EV thing is only going to grow. And it's going to get bigger, better, or not. And I think based on that cold weather snap, there's going to be a lot of people that may be thinking twice about it. But anyway, I would throw out that the answer is no. But we leave open an opportunity for some exceptions that may come up either now or down the road. And I'll use an example of one I thought about was if we go back into parking a park and ride and we get some federal funds that goes into something like that, and EV chargers is part of the deal, we've got to provide that, but we get an opportunity to reduce greenhouse gases and provide something that is part of the infrastructure that supports everyone, then maybe in that case, there may be an exception if it's defendable. But I think that you brought up that we owe it to, and Cindy it as well, we owe it to the citizens to make sure that what we're doing and spending the citizens' money on fits within the tenets and the program as it was established. And I think that politically in this county and this region, there's going to be some resistance. There's going to be some resistance to this. And I'll say it at the risk of being chastised later, but just because Boulder wants it doesn't mean El Paso County wants it. And so as popular as it may be, I just don't think that it fits within the tenets of RTA. My opinion, and I'll just throw that out, but I would suggest that we make a no vote on EV chargers with the option for exceptions. And so each exception is viewed on its own merits. And that would just be, I've given this a lot of thought over the last month, and I've had several conversations with several people about it. And so that would be another option to consider. trying to come up with a list of all the possible ways we could do it, or start with no and deal with exceptions? Cindy?
I agree with the no. I think the exceptions, because we even had some people come out to Calhoun. We had Mountain View Electric and then a company that does the EV chargers. They are looking to do them on the 24 corridor between Lyman and Springs. So they came to us. There are a lot of grants available for those EV chargers. I don't think PPRTA money needs to go to that. I know you're talking exceptions, but I would disagree. I just think we need to say no, and they need to find other avenues.
Carlos?
Yeah, good discussion. I just wanted to follow up on your point about what kind of, no, but maybe there are exceptions in that. Can the people from Manitou Springs here, can they kind of revisit and recap? They were the ones that actually drove this and saying, okay, we're going to be putting in these EV chargers there at the fitness center, and that this was a component of their transportation and maintenance of their transportation. I just wanted to revisit that and make sure that we're not precluding any sort of transportation component with the lack of these EV chargers. And I just wanted to hear what their arguments are again. And with the passage of time, maybe you can resynthesize that. But I would just like to know, what happens if we say no, PPRTA cannot do this? What are the implications? And can you justify how this actually fits in within the scope of the PPRTA, when previously we had a lot of questions about that? So if we can recap that, I would certainly appreciate that. Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Dolger Benick, city engineer with Manitou Springs. And I did bring this up, stir the hornet's nest a little bit, which is good. I think it's good to have the conversation because I think you're going to be asked in the future for this. In order to answer this question, you need to understand how Manitou operates. Okay. So not only do we have our own Manitou residents, we have an influx of about 5,000 visitors on a busy weekend, sometimes 7,000. Okay. Part of the motivation of this is to give those visitors, tourists, a chance to park their vehicles. If you do not offer EV charging in a destination community, those vehicles will potentially bypass your community because they need to park somewhere, charge, and then visit for the area. So for someone that is a tourism-based economy, having a place for visitors to come and charge is valuable to us. For some of your rural areas, I totally agree with your perspective. Another element here is that for those who are also familiar with Manitou is that we have a very mountainous terrain. We have lots of areas with densely populated homes. Some have garages. We have a lot of on-street parking. If you do not have a garage to put your car into, or you do not have on-street parking, or you don't have a garage and you're on-street parking, it's very difficult to charge an EV, right? Because you're literally running a cord from your house somewhere across your driveway, your front yard, your sidewalk. It's a tripping hazard. No one wants to do that. So as we've discussed, we already have 5 chargers installed in Manitou, and we get reports on those. I pull them every month of how much they're getting used. And I don't know if the usage matters, but they are getting used significantly. I can't tell whether it's a resident or a visitor, but we built those in September and we've had like 700 charging sessions since we installed them. So there's clearly a demand during when our least busy season comes. So I expect that when May, June, July up comes, those will be at almost max usage. People will be waiting in line to get to the especially the type 3. So what we heard from our residents was that they would get an EV as part of their usage of an EV vehicle if they had a reliable, fast way to charge their vehicle, knowing that it wouldn't be at their house. If they could come to the pool, charge, and go on their merry way, they would. They're saying that. I mean, can I guarantee they're going to do that? Of course I cannot. But based on the usage of our 5 chargers at Hiawatha, there's big use and big demand on those chargers, like I said, even during our less busy time. To the grant point, we did get a Charge Ahead Colorado grant to help pay for half of these chargers. And so we were asking PPRTA for like $23,000 to pay the other half of the cost of this installation. So, we talk about what percent, does anyone know what percent of vehicles are EV vehicles? Any guesses? 10%? Under 10. Okay, probably right. Although, Tesla's outselling everything right now. If you do $22,000 into $150 million, that's 0.015% of the RTA budget, which is less than the number of EV vehicles as a percentage on the road. So we're in line with the usage and expense, with RTA.
Carlos?
Just to clarify, and again, I appreciate the presentation because I wanted to just kind of get that on the record. What I hear, about the RTA, I do realize that we're solving regional transportation issues, but more back to Jim, to your point, we're not a one size fits all region. We have El Paso County, we also, we have Calhan, and we have Manitou Springs, completely different land use, completely different demographics, completely different needs that are there. And this idea that we're going to come up with a one size fits all policy, I'm a little troubled by that, but I can go there. The other thing that's kind of important that you bring up is that with these EV, if you have an EV in Manitou Springs, you're effectively fenced out of the transportation network by not having a place to go charge that EV. So the residents there, we build these nice roads, but they cannot use them for the type of rolling stock that they've acquired in this particular area. It may not be that way all over. So I am troubled that, we got to be cognizant of that when you build a transportation system that fences out the citizens who pay into the tax. And so I'm aware of that. I don't know where this is going to go, but I just want that to be in people's mind that, we're building a transportation system that works for everyone, not just for gasoline powered single occupancy vehicles. Thank you.
Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little background for the CAC. The CAC and the board did approve EV chargers for Manitou Springs under remember, it has to be under a voter approved capital project list, project name. So did approve several EV chargers to be installed at Manitou Springs capital project called Manitou Springs Transit Shuttle and Surface or Structured Parking. So the CAC board did approve installation in that parking lot.
Hiawatha Gardens is how it's known.
Yes. The more recent request is for installation of EV chargers, or replacing existing EV chargers at the Manitou Springs swimming pool and rec center parking lot, using the one of the other capital project names, Manitou Springs downtown sidewalk, drainage, and utilities improvements. So obviously EV chargers are not a sidewalk or drainage. So then the issue is, does the CAC and the board define the installation of replacement EV chargers as utilities improvements? Because it has to be in a voter approved capital project. So the key phrase is utilities improvements. So that's the yes or no question for the more recent request from Joel Grabenick.
Dave?
I think you have some other questions, Dave, and I think Ed Dills also has this.
Yeah, Ed's on too. Ed, just one moment.
Sure. Rick, that was a great overview. I guess my question is really, what's the ask today? It's kind of a procedural question, given that there's a special meeting on Valentine's Day on this same topic. So help us understand, what's the ask today?
Are there elements of, are there any words or phrases or elements from the documents in your packet or anything that the CAC comes up with to forward to the board for your joint meeting at 2:30 next Wednesday in this room to talk about the same topic with the full board?
Not frame a board policy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That may or may not frame a board policy around EV chargers.
Well, for what it's worth, I've got an open mind. I can see both. I would like to think I'm an EV charging advocate, But the reality is, I think, and I think was stated earlier that we've got a ways to go. I'm not convinced at this point this is the of what the right course of action is. I'd like to stay open-minded and maybe next week see where this takes us. It's a difficult question. It's a great question.
Yep. So couple of points, and I appreciate the city of Colorado Springs providing her inputs as well. And Rick, you put a lot of work into this, so thank you for facilitating this. You know, some of the summaries and points I saw in there I thought were very reasonable. You know, one of which is that RTA would not be responsible for the upkeep, maintenance, paying for electricity, any of that kind of stuff. I mean, from that regard, it's almost as if you're installing a parking meter with, you know, you're building a park and ride and there's parking meters. And then once RTA walks away from that, they're done. There's no operation obligations to it. And it becomes the responsibility of whatever agency is responsible for that area. So in our case, you know, we do charge a fee and will charge a fee for these to cover not only the electricity, but the administration of it as part of that. So people are used, you know, we're in a market now in a world today where people are used to paying to charge if it's a public charger. If they charge at home, it's cheaper. It's not free, it's cheaper. So we are planning to do that if that helps as well.
Ed, let me, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Rick kind of covered my question. I was trying to figure out if this was an approved capital project by the voters or not, maintenance or not. But as we get into this, I really don't see this as a utility issue, you know, when Rick covered the sidewalks and the other parts. So from my standpoint, this particular project, I would have a hard time saying yes on it. I'm not opposed to EV. I'm not opposed to the proper thing, but if it's not an approved capital project by the voters, I don't think we should be entering into this. And that's my opinion. I just wanted to state that. So at this point, I'm a no.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that if you look at the hardship on a EV owner when there's not that many places to charge, you can look around Colorado Springs and see all the apartments going up. And I don't know how you're going to put chargers for all those apartment dwellers. I mean, it's just part of the business model that they've created a situation that's going to be hard for a lot of EV owners unless they're fairly well off.
Cindy?
I know Calhoun and Manitou are very different, but we probably will have EV chargers put in by a local business owner because there are electric cars out there. My concern is, does PPRTA have to pay for it? I think they're needed. I think it would be great to have some in Calhoun as people drive by. We get a lot of people driving through, but I just don't think PPRTA is the right avenue for the funds.
You know,
This
one of
is-
the, go ahead. I think that was Ann.
Is it?
Go ahead, Ann.
Well, I was just going to mention another idea. I think it was about a year ago, Woodland Park entered into a lease agreement with the electrical company that provides the electricity up here, Core, I believe they're called. And their lease, they put them in for nothing. It was a central place in town, I think near the senior center where there's plenty of parking. And what was it? They'll be free for a while. And I can't remember all the details, but the town itself made that agreement. And that's just to lease something. And then and it'll kind of be a pilot project in a way. And at the end of a few years, the town can decide whether to stay in it or not. I think I'm right on that, but that's just another idea.
Okay. Rick, Larry?
I know. I believe at one of our previous board meetings, not the CAC meetings, but one of the board meetings, the mayor of Manitou Springs indicated that they had found additional funding, or that $23,000, to where they wanted to go ahead. And I'm not trying to shoot down, your project, but because of many of the issues that are coming up that we're discussing today and we'll discuss next week, did the did the city of Manitou Springs come up with that additional funds to where you can proceed to get those chargers put in?
Well, the mayor has the ability to do that. So if he did, great. I haven't heard that yet.
Do you remember that conversation?
I remember having a discussion, but I don't remember whether he had definitely found the funds.
Yeah.
I don't
Like,
recall.
he discussed, yeah, and maybe it was the fact that they were going to try and find the funds. You know, and go that way because of the issues that are, you know, popping up today.
Well, and I think, we talked about this last time and, when PPRTA 2 and 1 was developed, EV chargers were, they were not around. They were the crazy guys hooking wires and motors and batteries together, and they lasted like 7 minutes. So that industry has evolved a lot. So, Manitou's happy to help facilitate the discussion about this because, this is not going to be the last time RTA is going to have this topic in front of them as a major funder of the transportation system. This is a part of our future. It's just a matter of how it wants to serve it for sure. I don't know if anyone from, I don't know if.
Yeah, I guess I have to think back to the discussion about the bridge, the Platte Academy Bridge. It's 10 years from now. We need it. We need to plan now. I think we're at a point now where we're sticking our heads in the sand if we don't recognize that this is going to be reality, whether it's 30% or 20%, it's going to be a lot of people. And there are a lot of, Manitou's a case where, because of the way it was built out, people don't have garages, they don't have 240, whatever. But if we don't facilitate this phenomena, we're going to have a pretty big bottleneck. And in Manitou, it may be how we're built out. In Colorado Springs, with all these massive, colossal apartments being built up, you're going to have the same challenge. So the sooner we deal with it rather than pretend, oh yeah, because we had a cold spell, people don't like their EVs. That's nonsense. It's happening. Yeah, it'll happen in Boulder sooner than in Colorado Springs, but it is going to happen here too. You already see, if you just, when you're driving home, you'll see a lot more electric vehicles now than you did even a year ago. So, if we, if the stuff Rick provided doesn't give us a framework, maybe we just have to be coming up with some other strategies.
Dave?
Apologies, and I got to leave here in just a moment, but before I do, I want to thank you for the great discussion, everyone, for bringing this forward. I think in my mind, the overarching consideration is, are we competing with the private sector or not? I think that to the extent possible, the El Paso County commissioners, the city council members have a pretty clear policy overall to allow the public sector to stay out and the private sector to step forward if and when they can. That doesn't mean that we can't facilitate things, but I think if the private sector is capable and this can be viewed as competing with them in that regard, that's a difficult item for me to support. Still not saying yes or no, but I'd like to hear this discussion next week.
Any other comments or questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
To your point of, it's only 23,000 in the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket. It also is precedent setting. If we say to the taxpayers, you agreed to pay a 1% tax for these items, the infrastructure, the maintenance. But really, we think you probably meant it was okay for us to go ahead and do this other thing. Pretty soon you lose the confidence of the voters. I would not be opposed to seeing another separate ballot measure. Do the taxpayers want to contribute to EV charging stations? But as far as the PPRTA money, I think that we owe it to the taxpayers to be responsible with the money that they've entrusted this entity to.
Can I piggyback on what Kathy just said?
Sure.
yes and no all at the same time. Yes, it's coming in 10 years, but we just passed PPRTA 3 and I don't think now would be the hour. So that might be a PPRTA 4 conversation, and this board and this body is going to have to figure out what we, as the people sitting in this room, and the board as the people on the board, are going to do today.
So,
But it needs to be presented to the voters.
That's what I'm saying no to. I said not right now, because we just passed PPRTA 3, and I think we've done an excellent job of putting a ballot initiative on and living with it for 10 years, which is a big lift. I'm sure Rick knows. And then doing it again and then having another big lift. So yes, I think we need to ask the voters, but I think that's a PPRTA 4 question, or that's a gas vehicles have been outlawed question. Now what do we do? Like, I think there's going to need to be a huge catalyst to really take that step, but that's my personal opinion.
Just a minute, Dole, Gail, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to share a couple of things from the city of Colorado Springs perspective. One, and I would encourage you all not to debate the infiltration of EV vehicles, as Brandy and others have started to say. It's whether or not we want to be in the business of fueling and charging, I think, as Cindy mentioned. As you saw from the city's responses in general, we're not in favor of doing that. We also concur that the private industry is doing that. And we also are, we may be in a somewhat unique position that we have a parking enterprise, although, and it does have EV charging in it, although it's limited because it is in direct competition with the private industry. And in fact, private industry comes and leases space from us in our garages to provide EV chargers. Just wanted to share that with you. So when you get the city's perspective, you just have that information. The thing I wanted to make sure we haven't talked about is really because PPRTA funds transit operations, and we also have some transit capital. I think it's really important to keep in mind, not knowing exactly how transit is going to be operating in the future, that we at least preserve the options to have transit operating funds, which is that separate 10% available for transit or MMT to have available to use as local match as they bring these vehicles in and have to operate and maintain them because they use those PPRTA operating dollars as a local match for their federal dollars. So one. And two, with the capital programs, there were two listed in the PPRTA 3 with the transit vehicle supplement and the transit enhancements. I would like to keep those open options for them, not knowing what their needs are going to be in the future. It is, I did also want to supplement regarding that. I wanted to supplement something Rick said. The list that I provided in July of 2022 in support of the PPRTA 3 ballot and those projects, although the descriptions were not included in the ballot, that information was readily available in city council meetings and PPRTA public meetings and available on the city's website. So we were very clear on what our intent was, particularly in that vehicle supplement, that we wanted to at least have the flexibility, not knowing where the industry is going to go, to be able to adapt and support our transit fleet. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear before we had closing on this topic today. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So Gail's advocacy would be, well, one option would be the very last attachment in your packet, the summary option number 3. Which contains what Gail was just mentioning.
Yeah, and I failed to mention that too, but transit would be the exception there for chargers in my thinking. But Dole, go ahead.
So it's just a terrific discussion, and it is important that we honor the taxpayers, because I think that the reason why PPRTA 3 was so successful was because 1 and 2 have honored their promises and commitments all this time. I mean, everybody in this room has benefited from an RTA project in one way or another. So very much appreciate that. So then the question becomes, how many of those taxpayers drive EVs? Well, you might one day. But the point is, there is a percentage of our users that drive EVs. So they would be voting or representing differently perhaps than for a gas vehicle. So to those percentage, and I wish I could tell you it's 17,000, but someone probably has the data. The state has it locked up, but I don't have access to it. So there is a percentage of EV users out there that would support having EV chargers be funded in this way, and then for them to have public access to it. So I do think it's important that we do consider, we do have gas, diesel, and we have EV users, currently in our system now as well.
Okay. We've had a really good discussion. Let me see if I can summarize what I would tell the board next week prior to our getting together. And I've heard a few pros. I've heard some concerns. Those of you that have known me very long know that I am very big on what the public thinks, and that we are answerable to the public as the Citizens Advisory Committee to take their things in. And so that is a big thing to me. And so while I readily admit that EV chargers are coming down the road, we're at the beginning of the game according to where it could be and where it probably will be. The question is, do we have the mandate and the information to make that tenable to the citizens right now, given the other transportation needs that we have? That's where I kind of come down. And so how I would summarize to the board, not my opinion, but that we all voice concerns. There was a majority of what I heard today was not in support of funding EV chargers at this point in this process. And although we had some good points about it, and an individual and each community is different, rural is much different than where they are. So I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that at this juncture, based on the information we have, if we were to ask a vote, looking around at nonverbal and comments, would it be that we're not necessarily in favor of doing EV chargers with RTA funding at this point? Is that a fair assessment from what I see?
Short question.
I
Rick,
agree.
for any
Yes.
reason, would we need to codify anywhere that transit's exempt, or is there enough definitive language that you feel and Gail feels is in the ballot that doesn't need to be addressed?
I would say that we need to exempt transit, in my personal opinion, but exempt them from the no, yes. I mean, we've already got electric buses and we're trying to go that route, and well, they're not working, but that doesn't.
They are currently in our fleet, and typically at least 2 of them work at one time.
There is a charger in the maintenance shop. I've seen it. Is that a fair assessment, folks? I mean,
So I would add that to your summary
okay,
to exempt transit.
Dole?
So Jim, I did find the data I was looking for. So as of September 2023, there's 94,000 registered EVs in the state of Colorado. So I assume El Paso County makes up their percentage of that. I can't verify.
Right.
But they said as of September 2023, 11% of all new vehicles are all registered vehicles are EV. So 11%.
In Denver.
What was the number?
94,000 statewide. Yeah. As of September 2023. So that's 5 months ago. So whatever the number is now.
Thank you.
Okay, so Rick, you want to wrap up, or any other comment you want to add in?
Just a supplemental, I think you've summarized that the majority of the CAC are not in favor of a general application, but that Mountain Metro Transit, because of their presentation to the CAC and the board in July of 22, and their intent of to have the option for fueling or charging their fleet, not for general public use, but their fleet in one or two of their capital projects and or their operating funds. So I think that sounds like what your summary is. At some point, we're going to have to address Dole's request, and I'll go back to is replacing EV chargers at the Manitou Springs Pool and Rec Center parking lot a Manitou Springs downtown utilities improvements. At some point, the CAC and the board is going to have to give that a yes or a no.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when this came up, the project came up initially, I think what was included in the utility piece of that under the sidewalks and along the street and all of that was conduit for fiber and cable, not utility like electric wires, so to speak. And it was to try to get overhead, underground, under the sidewalk. And so utilities is a broad word, but within the scope of that project as defined, I don't recall that it was electric, that it was conduit for fiber and other things. So I'm not arguing your point. I'm just saying is that utilities is a broad word, and we could get ourselves in an issue in trying to do electric wires that CSU and other utility companies are for. So I just wanted to throw out my recollection of that project when it was discussed. But anyway, I throw that out. All right. So good discussion, Dole. Hang tight, but
So I have one more announcement then, if that's okay, Jim. Today is my last CAC meeting. So I'm leaving Manitou at the end of February. So I get to go off with a big no, and I'll be at the board. But it's been a pleasure working with you. I always feel like you guys have been really supportive of all the Manitou's projects and efforts up to now. So I appreciate it.
and congratulations on your new job, and
thanks.
and wish you the best, man.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 8C, discussion of CAC member in-person attendance. So Dave Zolnick brought this up. I'll turn it over to Rick.
Thank you. In Dave's absence. At last month's meeting, Dave brought up the topic of whether or not there should be a minimal number of in-person attendance occasions out of the 12 meetings per year. He did not mention a number when he was here last month. So I'll just open it up and see if there's anywhere from 0 to 12, somebody start the conversation and see what feels comfortable. How many times do you want to mandate that CAC members have to be here in person? And of course, if whatever you recommend, that would have to go to the board, because the board controls the CAC bylaws. So if there is a mandate, your recommendation have to go to the board. So with that, I'll sign off and let you start discussing.
Cindy?
So I will speak as one of the people who does not come to very many meetings. Calhan is approximately 45 minutes to an hour. Not including weather, because that would be a separate issue. Sometimes, it takes my whole afternoon, and I'm the town clerk. I need to be there. So I don't like the idea of a mandate. Most of the time I'm online. A couple times I have missed, but I don't see why there should be a mandate, but that's my opinion.
Anyone else? Barb?
I just have a question. Does the board have a requirement among their body? Because I would think that
no,
we would look
No.
similar
No.
in that regard.
You know, the technology has given us the option of having the Zoom now and versus not being present or just listening in on a phone thing. And I think where Dave's point was, as we've seen today in this discussion and in others, we really have a pretty good turnout for the most part of our members. And the one thing that I've defended to the board on numerous occasions is the interchange and the discussion and the exchanging of ideas and stuff that this CAC does have. And I think that there's value in being in the room, seeing the nonverbal, seeing and being part of the discussion that you don't always get from the video ability. And thanks, Jared, I see it. And so it's a nice tool, and it's convenient for those that can't make it. In Cindy's case, and in some places when you're on a business trip and you're out of town, and I'd rather have you there than not at all, personally. But I think that there is, while maybe not setting a quota, I think that we should try to set as a goal that you ought to try to attend several meetings a year in person, to make that a goal. And so that my feedback in terms of, I get it. And I know that on a snowy day, you don't want to drive 45 minutes. I wouldn't either. We have the alternative to do it differently that we didn't used to have. But on the other hand, there's some folks that just use it all the time. So go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I've been on the CAC for about a year now, and I'd say this is one of the few meetings I've attended in person, and it was much more productive, or much more like I felt, when you look at the technology, for those people who are zooming in, you see them if they have their cameras on. But that sort of wide body, the wide angle shot of everything, when someone speaks and you're on Zoom, it's a guess who's speaking. You can't even see people's lips moving. So I think it at a minimum, it should be encouraged that people attend in person as frequently as possible. Even if it's not a requirement, at least advocate for that.
I agree.
Don't forget about Ed.
It's still.
Oh, Ed, I'm sorry, Ed. Yeah, sorry, you got your hand up.
Yeah, see, that's the problem with being online. No, but seriously, I prefer to be in person. I mean, the interaction, like was just mentioned, is you can't replace that being online. Having said that, I was grateful today, post-surgery, doctor tells you be there at 1:15, you're at Briargate. There's no way I could have made it downtown. So I'm here, but it's not the same. And I think some of what Dave had to say last month had to go back with what Richard, our previous member, had. And Richard was adamant about having people in person so he could get the eye-to-eye contact and everything. So my personal opinion, I value being there. I prefer to be there, but I'm grateful we have a resource where we can participate alternatively. So that's my opinion.
Okay. So we don't need to make a decision on this today. There's no real decision to make unless we absolutely want. And I get the sense that everyone kind of appreciates the benefit of being in person, but we have an alternative and that it's useful. And just be here when you can. And let's just try to emphasize that as we go forward without creating a quota. We don't need another reason to be writing somebody a silly letter or something. And we're all citizens, we're all volunteers. We're doing this out because we want to be part of what's going on in the neighborhood. And so we'll table it, have a nice discussion, and thank you all very much.
I'll add one thing. I would say if Jim was the only one in the room sitting here talking to Rick and Gail and Jeff, we might have a problem, but I think we have good attendance and I think we all appreciate everybody who comes down and interacts with each other.
And I'll just, I'll add to that, Brandy. And Rick can back me up on this. There's a number of times we've talked about the CAC participation, and I'll tell you, the board is super thankful for what we do. And I have reinforced what this group does, that our exchanges are interactive. We've got a bunch of engineers, we've got a bunch of non-engineers, we've got folks that interact, that bring a lot of experience to the table, from all aspects of life. And that I think it's to the benefit of the citizens and this, and the RTA in general, of what we contribute to this. And so I'll keep defending that to the board as long as I'm in a position to do that. But I think we've got a great group of people, a great diverse background, and the subject of engineers on city contracts came up in a discussion with some of the board members, and we have a way to deal with that. And we have not had a problem with that in the past, that when it's necessary, people recuse themselves from voting. And if necessary, we'll take that big long list of 15 projects or something and use Reb Williams. We bifurcate it. Yeah. Reb's favorite word. If we have to, we'll separate those out if it gets to be a big deal. But we want to make sure that we keep doing what we got. And I'm proud to be part of this group. So I'll just tell you that. So anyway, all right, enough on that. Agenda topics for next meeting. Any burning issues we want to bring up for next week? Other than what we got to do next Wednesday?
I got a quick clarification for Gail. Are we going to see some information next month on Copper Ridge and how that project is going, or?
You will have it in your quarterly report next month for what happened in Q4 of 2023 on that project. And it will either be next month or the month after. I'm going to start doing an informational item on the finance for that project. I just got the first invoices and already sent them back for questions today. So I don't know if I'll have them ready for next month. But within 2 months,
All
you
right.
should have that informational item I mentioned earlier.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any communications? Anybody want to communicate anything? Special groups, Rick?
Just with regard to attendance versus zooming in, that the mix today was 12 in attendance and 4 zooming in, 12 and 4.
Awesome. All right, not seeing or hearing any other things, we'll call it adjourned. Have a great evening and everyone drive safe and thanks for being here.